help women, save lives, and peacefully end abortion where you live.
I can tell you exactly what would happen. The infant would be delivered. The infant would be kept comfortable. The infant would be resuscitated if that's what the mother and the family desired.
You were serious about that?
Be inspired to change hearts and minds by joining over 1 million volunteers taking part in the global movement happening in your neighborhood.
She says, pray that I can get through this abortion. And I said, oh, no. So she went ahead and went into the abortion clinic. And she just came out. She told us, I'm not going to get the abortion. We just had a baby saved. We had a baby saved in Memphis today. Praise the Lord.
This is the 40 Days for Life podcast with your host, Sean Carney.
Hello, and thank you for joining us today on the 40 Days for Life podcast. I am Sean Carney, the president and CEO of 40 Days for Life, and your host for this podcast, which is dedicated to helping you end abortion where you live. And welcome to the second video podcast ever in the history of 40 Days for Life. If you saw our first one last week, we were in my home studio, and now Steve is back in Wisconsin because he missed the snow. And so he is back and joining us. Steve, happy winter to you.
Happy winter. It is so cold it hurts your face to go outside. So I'm all bundled up in my 40 Days camo.
I see that. Yeah, you look amazing. You look amazing. And I am starting the year off because this is the year of free speech.
Ooh.
For 40 Days for Life. We didn't ask for it to be the year of free speech, but it's necessary for it to be the year of free speech because so many people and countries and governments, including ours, who historically have advocated for free speech, now don't like it if it disagrees with their opinion, which typically the opinion is irrelevant. It's that we support free speech, not just some speech, particularly our own speech. We support all free speech. So, Steve, as you know, we had our first symposium in Germany, okay? So I'm wearing the German 40 Days for Life hoodie on one of these early video podcasts. You cannot get this at 40daysforlifegear.com. You can definitely get Steve's cool camo hoodie. But, Steve, the Germans walk around. I was a history major, and I know you were a journalism major, Steve. So I guess I should start from the basics. You were aware that we were involved in something called World War II, correct?
Yes, my grandfather was a war hero, took multiple bullets and shrapnel and all sorts of things. Never talked about it. It was only at the very end of his life we learned about any of it, but we've got the Purple Heart and everything, so yeah.
I remember you mentioning that, so it's good to know. So you were brought up with this, as was I. My grandfather was in the Pacific and was on a submarine for a time. And so the Brits and the Americans had to go in and defeat Germany. And, of course, the Germans now kind of walk on eggshells when you go over there because they think that every American thinks that they're a Nazi and, they have their dark history and they study the Holocaust and all the things that they should be doing for the atrocities that they are very much guilty of in their dark history. So we keep winning freedom of speech cases in Germany, because they don't want to go back. They don't want to go back to their dark history. They remember the days, the show me your papers. They remember all of that, and they don't want to go back. So Tomislav Kunovic, who is our executive director international, is also a great attorney, probably arguably the best buffer zone attorney in all of Europe. He's won major cases. And Steve, when he sued and won a huge free speech case in Germany just last year, 2022, we've talked about it a lot, they literally had 3 female judges at this trial, and he took them to the vigil, to the 40 Days for Life vigil, and was like, this is what we're doing. Tell me how we're violating free speech. This is what we're doing. And it was awesome. He won big time.
Multiple times. I know there were appeals, and then they okay, we lost. We'll just put in another buffer zone law, and he just kept fighting it and kept winning in a really short order, just again and again and again.
Yeah, and we scratch our head because that's great for free speech. It's great that we defeated Germany, and it's great that they don't want to go back to their dark history, and therefore, despite being a very pro-abortion country, protects pro-life free speech, as we all claim we do in the West. And now we're having to sue the stupid UK, who arrested our leader, Isabel, for a thought crime.
In the cradle of free speech. I mean, that's really where it all began. I'd love to say it all began in America, right? We could tell Robert about it, but this is where our heritage of free speech in the world is in the UK, and here they are with literally a thought crime.
And we're not quoting 1984. That's actually what he was charged with, is a thought crime, which means silently standing in front of an abortion facility in the UK. So a lot going on behind the scenes. I know we've made a few comments about it. Well, you'll hear more from 40 Days for Life as we help defend her and work with our wonderful friends in the UK. But again, not American cowboys coming over, telling the Brits what to do. She's British. She's standing outside British property, and she was arrested by British police for apparently British thought crimes. And so absolutely absurd. You look at what's going on in the UK. We said it all year last year. It's going to come over here, and it has. And now New York, whose law, I mean, the UK stuff pales in comparison to Westchester County, New York, who we're suing, where the buffer zone, it's not the traditional 8-foot, which we've had in the United States. It can go up to 25 feet or 100 feet.
That's one of the nefarious things about it, right? Is nobody even knows what it means. You need a law degree to figure out, wait, here is it 8 feet, there is it 20, where is it, how many feet, what are you allowed to do, what are you not allowed to do? If you look at someone, it's absolutely insane. And I think it's structured so that people throw up their hands and say, well, I don't know what to do. I guess I'll just stay home and I won't pray for an end to abortion. I won't do sidewalk outreach to those vulnerable women and have the most important conversation in the world.
It's also set up for them to lose because it's so vague. It's poorly written, and we're going to sue them. We're going to win. It's going to go to the Supreme Court at a very good time of history for the Supreme Court, and we'll eliminate all buffer zones once for all because the only standing one is Colorado v. Hill, and this law is set up to overturn Colorado v. Hill and end all buffer zones. So we're saying this not like we're complaining, like they're all coming after us, which they are. We'll get to the DOJ in a moment. But not just that, but this is good. We are winning these cases. We won in Liverpool, England. We won in Nottingham, England, where Robin Hood is from. And we're going to win in New York. We'll end buffer zones in the U.S., and that's why 2023 is going to be the year of freedom of speech. And I remember years ago, Eric Schuyler said there'd be no freedom of speech without the pro-life movement, and that was like 15 years ago or 20 years ago. And he was right. We have to keep defending it, and not just defending it, but going on offense. I remember I spoke at the UK March for Life back in September, and I was walking with the Washington Post London correspondent reporter. She interviewed me for like 40 minutes. Of course, the story never ran because I think she was writing a fair article. So story never ran, but she interviewed me for 40 minutes. And Steve, this British woman, for some reason, when the Brits get mad, and I apologize for my voice, I'm starting 2023 with an allergy attack. So great time to launch a video podcast. But I'm walking, and the Brits, because their accent, like they could just cast us to hell, but it would still sound nice and sophisticated, and you would feel like you're watching Downton Abbey. And this lady ran up and dropped a couple of F-bombs at me and then sprinted off. Wasn't really a question. I mean, I would have talked to her. I have no problem. I get people screaming at me and throwing stuff all the time.
This is really more of a comment.
This is really more of a comment, Mr. Carney. F you. And so that was the gist of it. And the Washington Post reporter said, so do you want her to have freedom of speech because that's what it means. Like, we don't know what it means. And I said, yes. And we're spending money and getting lawyers to defend her right as a pro-abortion person to scream and curse at us. We're defending free speech. And there was a time in England when they agreed with that. And you didn't need Americans coming over and reminding you of your rich history, which we ripped off from the Magna Carta. So it's been a great, way that the UK media has been saying this was stupid because now we're not talking about abortion, Steve. We're talking about freedom of speech, which English people deeply care about. And I know one of the articles in The Guardian, it ended with saying, and this is a huge advantage for 40 Days for Life. And it is. So I think that we'll win. And I know today we're going to do pro-life resolutions. And some of these are tied directly to freedom of speech because we have to use our rights and defend our rights because it's detrimental to the abortion industry. Planned Parenthood cannot get rid of us.
That's absolutely right. And, the story that you told about the Washington Post correspondent, it sort of reminds me of, you'll see this sort of like gotcha talking point that the abortion industry loves to trot out. Like, what if they discover a gay gene? Are you going to be okay with not aborting the gay fetus? And obviously our answer is, yeah. Of course, we don't want anybody aborted. We don't want anybody killed. We want everybody to be born and everybody to have free speech. And now on this first episode of the 40 Days for Life podcast, the second rather, of 2023, we're going to talk about some of those resolutions that we can set to really put that free speech into play. How can we exercise those rights, use them to save lives, gay, straight, or whatever other categories are made up between now and the end of 2023?
Yeah, and one last positive note on free speech, and we're going to do a whole podcast on this, but I just want to, I can't get into the details of it. I hate to say it like that, but I've been talking to somebody from the DOJ, and I feel very good about what's happening in Philadelphia with Mark Hawk.
Excellent.
I think we're going to win. I think we're going to win big. I think they got in over their head and they're running around saying, we don't have a SWAT team. And of course, we're sending out the picture of the FBI guys who looked really cool, by the way, holding their AR-15s. It was just to raid a guy who had 7 kids and who wasn't charged by the local DA. That was what was so stupid about it. But I feel very good. In all my communications with the DOJ, I get the sense that we're going to have a very good year this year with freedom of speech, and we're going to right some wrongs that have gone on in our country. So
I'm really glad to hear about that because there's a lot of implications to that too, right? We haven't just seen the FBI set up their reproductive rights task force, but California has done so. New Jersey set one up, Sean. I don't remember if you saw this or not. They call it their reproductive rights strike force. I am not a Star Wars guy, but if that doesn't send like those stormtrooper guys images into your head, I don't know what does.
Yeah, I think what's awkward of the whole thing is all this is post-Roe, and the DOJ freaking said it. Well, we got to defend women's rights. We have been targeting pro-life groups since the Supreme Court made a decision, as if it's up to the DOJ, to interpret the Supreme Court's decisions and how people should respond to it. But we've had no problems with the FBI, no problems with the DOJ until Roe was overturned. And in fact, when you look at 40 Days for Life, Steve, we have worked with the FBI over the years. We work with law enforcement. We don't have to, but we train our leaders. We go meet with local police. We love the cops. During a time, by the way, when everybody in America hates the cops and wants to defund them, we're the ones who are out on the street using our rights, giving cops donuts and thanking them and calling them and meeting with police chiefs. And we have a great relationship with law enforcement. Always have. Until the feds started, raiding our houses in 2022 after Roe. And so there was a distinct change. 40 Days for Life didn't change. You and the 1 million volunteers around the world didn't change. All that changed is something that is completely out of your control, which is the Supreme Court overturning a law. And the Supreme Court makes decisions a lot. They overturn previous decisions a lot. That's what they do. But we didn't overturn Roe. Okay? the Supreme Court did. And it was bad law, as Ginsburg said. And, of course, we applaud it, and we think it should have been overturned. It was long overdue. Never asked for it. It was all-male Supreme Court that gave us the horrible law that dehumanized, once again, an entire segment of our population. So we didn't change. The DOJ definitely changed. The FBI definitely changed in how they looked at us. And all of a sudden, we have Matt Britton. He was in law enforcement for years. He was a 4-term elected DA. Served our country. We work with law enforcement. What changed was the DOJ and how they viewed us. And we gave them no reason to view us differently than overturning of Roe. So I think we have a lot of friends in the DOJ and in the FBI. Not in all aspects. Certainly at the top, it seems to be very shady. But I think we have a lot of allies. And I'm very optimistic going in from my communications with them that this Philly thing is a loser, and just anybody sitting on their couch watching it is like, that just doesn't pass the smell test. So I'm excited about that. I think we're going to have a great year for freedom of speech. We continue to be peaceful, we continue to be prayerful, and we continue to change hearts and minds. In the United States of America, as of now, unless you're in Westchester County, New York, you can still do that. And praise God for that, because that's what makes this work so good. And that's what makes America so great, is that we can do it, and people can oppose us in the public doing it. And we can have public discourse, but we can't do that when people are showing up with AR-15s, saying I'm from the government and I'm here to help. So with that, let's look at some pro-life resolutions. We've done this podcast before, but this one's much different. We've changed a lot of things and added things because of these current times.
The post-Roe year warrants some post-Roe New Year's resolutions.
The post-Roe year warrants post-Roe resolutions. That's a lot. That's a lot. And in case you're wondering, we like saying post-Roe. There's a lot of people that go like gluten-free. It's not for like it's not like an allergy. Those people are out there. But I'm convinced, because somebody will say, I'm gluten-free or I'm vegan. And I understand the vegans if it's like your cardiologist says it, or animal rights people. I understand that. I don't mind that. I don't like what they do to the animals. I'm vegan. But I think there is a trend. This is just me talking out loud, which probably is not prudent. There's a trend that the gluten-free and the vegan people just like saying gluten and vegan, Steve.
I'm happy about it because it leaves more gluten for me, and I can get a little bit of extra gluten on my dinner.
I've tried to increase gluten and reduce my vegan intake over the years, for better, for worse, probably for worse. But I do like gluten. I want to add gluten to things. I'm not sure I know exactly what gluten is, but I like saying gluten, and we'll just move on from that. Okay, we're in a new year. Roe is dead. If you can't join, if you're listening to this or watching it on the YouTube channel, by the way, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Great response last week. We released the first episode of the video podcast. Be sure to subscribe. Get your friends to subscribe. YouTube actually has been fair to us. We'll say that, knock on wood. But we've been censored on Twitter. We've been censored on Facebook. Twitter's obviously getting a lot better these days. But YouTube still, they'll put their little warning up, which they just do. But they haven't removed a video. So thank you, YouTube. It's ridiculous we have to say that. But in these uncertain times of free speech, it seems necessary. But be sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel. The first thing that we need to do post-Roe, because this is what we know is detrimental to the abortion industry. It's why 40 Days for Life is built for a post-Roe world. 45% of all the abortion facilities we've closed are in states that not only will have abortion, but they'll celebrate abortion as a good. So we have got to go to the sidewalks in 2023. We got to.
And definitely take a step outside your comfort zone, I think, on that front. Some of you listening perhaps have admired our local 40 Days for Life leaders from afar. I'm glad there's people going out there. I don't know whether I could do it personally. If you've never been out, this is the year to do it, because this is a year where the Supreme Court has returned the spiritual battle to end abortion to the local level, to the actual Planned Parenthood facilities and other abortion businesses where the lives are actually lost. So not a year by any means to sit on the sideline. If you've already done that, you've already gone out, maybe you go out more this year. Maybe you set a resolution of, I'm going to go out more during my 40 Days for Life campaign, which starts on February 22nd. Or maybe you decide you're going to go out in between campaigns, join a 40 Days for Life 365 campaign. Maybe you take that next step. Usually this is not the first step that people take as they're diving into pro-life activism, but maybe you're going to learn to do sidewalk outreach. You can do that through 40 Days for Life University, 40daysforlife.com/university. Sign up and get trained. These are things where I think whatever you do, the important thing is that you go outside your comfort zone. Maybe you already lead a campaign and you're ready to take it to the next level and go 365 with a year-round vigil. You can start as little as 1 day a week of coverage out there. But this is the time where we put our foot on the gas pedal. It's not a time for us to back down in any fashion. It's not a time, some people have said, gosh, Roe's overturned. Why do we still need to go out there? The abortion industry isn't sleeping and they're not going away. And what we have today in numerous states, we might not have tomorrow unless we fight for it. So I think it's a key thing. Don't just keep it up, but step it up. Take a step outside what makes you comfortable and let the Lord work with that.
The other thing, we talk about post-Roe, and everybody kind of whines about the DOJ and the FBI and all that stuff, but that's good. It's brought attention to our efforts. I mean, I tell you who it's bad for is Planned Parenthood. They may be telling the FBI, lock all these people up, but number one, that's not going to happen. And number two, it just brings attention to them. The morale inside of a Planned Parenthood is in the toilet right now. It is an all-time low. All-time low. It's already a miserable place to work. When it was high tide, and they had Cecile Richards, and they had Obama, and they had cool cocktail parties and all that garbage, it's still a miserable place to work.
We've heard Sue and Ramona, Sue Thayer, God rest her soul, and Ramona Trevino talk about how you don't really want to be noticed at the grocery store. And you go grocery shopping, and you're not really sure who's going to stop and be like, hey, I regret that abortion that you sold me. So just to add to your point, Sean, all the more so now.
And that's sad. We're not like harping on the workers going, I'm glad they're more miserable than they ever been, boy. We're saying that's usually the impetus of them reaching out to us and leaving. I mean, you can't tell anybody where you work, and it's different. It's not like you work for Enron, and you don't want anybody to know you ever worked there because of their financial scandal. This is different. This is not Enron. When you say you work at Planned Parenthood or an abortion facility, all the scandals, all the crimes committed, the baby body part stuff, all that stuff, it's following you around Kroger.
Every individual who's had an abortion, there's baggage to that. You meet the person like, gosh, my sister had an abortion, she never recovered, and now you're dealing with that at the grocery store.
Yeah, and I've heard former workers say they're always worried about running into a woman who came into their clinic, particularly, after their conversion. And some have. And some women who have had an abortion and then seen a worker who converted have shared with that converted worker, could care less that you converted. You weren't there for me on that day, and I live with regret every day, which isn't fair to the worker. The woman's culpable, but, the former workers worry about that. The current workers worry about that, running into their own clients. They're not besties with these women going in and having 2 or 3 abortions at their local facility. So I just think going into 2023, we need to remember it's horrible working there. That's why they're turning to all these outside influences. What happened to just standing up for women and running the best abortion facility you possibly can, and getting out in the community and sharing all the good that you do, and having free STD testing days and all the stuff Planned Parenthood used to do, they don't do anymore. Instead, they go whine to the cops or the DOJ or the FBI and say, this evil lady with a rosary, lock her up. It's so, first off, it's mission drift, which is good for us. Secondly, I guess for your average person who could care less about abortion, it's just a waste of tax money. The law enforcement have to respond to all this garbage. And number three, it's not helping women at all. And that's why it's such a great moment for us to go out to the sidewalks, get trained in sidewalk outreach. Even if you'll never use it, even if you're terrified, go through it. We talk you off the ledge. We take you A to Z, how to speak to a woman who's considering abortion, how do you know your rights, how to speak to an abortion worker who approaches you, whether they're happy or angry. These are all proven conversations, and the actual training is great, and you're going to save a life in 2023. If you go through it, you're going to save a life. But let's say you go through the training and you don't want it at all. You're never going to use it. It's still helpful in day-to-day conversation. So
you're not required to do anything with it, but you're now equipped to do something with it when the moment is right.
Absolutely. Okay, next on our pro-life resolution. So step number 1, take a step out of your comfort zone. That's 1A. 1B is listen or watch our Roe is Dead webcast. We cover a lot in that webcast. That is, it's tonight. So if you're watching this now, join us tonight, January 10th. But if you're catching the recording of this podcast, go back and watch our Roe is Dead kind of kickoff 2023. We give you the lay of the land for the pro-life movement in Post-Roe, and we give you the lay of the land of the abortion industry and Planned Parenthood. And Ramona Trevino has some great things as a former Planned Parenthood manager to share about Planned Parenthood's concerns and weaknesses in the next 12 months. So definitely check out the Roe is Dead webcast. Okay. The second resolution is a lost art, Steve.
Yes, read. Not 144 characters on Twitter. Read an actual book this year, a pro-life book. It can be an explicitly...
Was it George Costanza made a resolution, I believe it was during the summer of George, where he said, I will read a book, a whole book. That's basically what we're saying.
Yeah, that's what we're saying. Read a book, a pro-life book. Get yourself further educated on this atrocity of abortion and where we go from here. You can read one of our books. You don't have to. I'm not saying that the books are available easily at 40daysforlifegear.com. I'm not saying that you have to log on right now and get one, or that they're available on Amazon either. You don't have to do that. You can. But there's other books, too, that you can get. Certainly Unplanned by Abby Johnson. If you haven't read it, it's more than just the movie. Get the book and read it. It goes into more detail, as every book does, than a movie possibly can. You can get The Hand of God by Bernard Nathanson, a great book about the conversion of one of the pioneers who really brought about Roe. He helped bring about Roe. Now it's gone. Get the full story on that. You can read fiction books that maybe don't directly address abortion, but they touch on some of these philosophical issues, the cultural issues, the groundwork that makes it possible for abortion to be the leading cause of death, both in America and around the world. Sean, I know you and I both like Brave New World, which I think speaks to a lot of the things we've seen.
Huxley was declared an alarmist in the early 1930s when that came out, and now we're sort of underwhelmed by him. You know, we're like, that's it. That's all you predicted. But
I thought you said this was a fiction book.
That's right.
Everything he said is happening.
That's right. This is getting real. So that 1984, those two, 1984 is a little too real, but Brave New World is just great literature. It's a great book. Did you mention Architects of the Culture of Death?
That would be a good nonfiction book to take on. Just a little light reading there. Christmas break is over.
I happen to have a copy. This is amazing. This never happens. So this is the cover. Let's get a good shot of that. This is the cover. I believe, Steve, yeah, that's the Angel of Death. That's not a member of the DOJ. That's an Angel of Death. And what this book is so great, little intense title, obviously an intense cover there with the angel of death, but like we get the point. But if it's really cold where you live, that's a great winter Wisconsin book for you, Steve. You can just sit in your house and read and just be depressed. But it's very well researched. It's not as heavy as the cover looks, but they break down basically what you need to know of how we got here. And I think that's important because everybody is mad, screaming at their TV, world going to hell in a handbasket. And they don't think about how we got here. And how we got here is not, I think, overwhelming. And I think it gives us a roadmap of how we get out of here and improve our culture and improve thought. But the Architects of the Culture of Death breaks down the people, philosophers, and loons who created a lot of what we see now regarding human sexuality, the dignity of the human person, why we can't just kill someone because we want them dead. So very, very good book.
Even though it's thick too, you mentioned it's not too heavy. Like each of the architects that they're covering, we're talking like 15, 18 pages, maybe 12 pages. It's just kind of a little biographical sketch that shows how did they get to be that messed up and what were the fruits of it. And I think it makes it a little less imposing, the work that we're doing, Sean, and the work that all of our listeners are doing, because you kind of see these are ordinary people. Sometimes we get caught up in like it's big tech or it's Hollywood or it's Wall Street or all these big entities that feel like the Wizard of Oz when it's really just the man behind the curtain. This book pulls that curtain away and really reveals these are just some ordinary, very flawed, tragic individuals, and we don't actually, in fact, need to base our whole culture around them.
One of my favorite sections, the eugenic evolutionists. There you go. That's chapter 2. But you've got Nietzsche, you've got Rand. Some people like her. She's very popular in America. Of course, Karl Marx, Jean-Paul Sartre. We're just giving you a little sneak peek. Alfred Kinsey. That's a great chapter.
I couldn't read that whole chapter. I couldn't read that whole one.
That one, yeah. We're not going to get into that. This is a family video podcast. But that explains a lot of the trans stuff. Margaret Sanger, of course. Alan Guttmacher.
We did the whole podcast on that.
And what did Alan Guttmacher say, Steve, about abortion saving lives?
Never necessary to save the life of a mother.
I think that's like they think Ginsburg regrets somehow. They're speaking for dead people now on the left, but she regrets saying that Roe was bad law. I think that's probably what they say about Guttmacher. He would never say that now.
Yeah, I'm sure he wouldn't.
Jack Kevorkian. Recent.
It's a name I haven't thought about recently.
I know it. He kind of got lost with these other architects. And then Peter Singer's in here. So I think what's great is some of the people. Helen Gurley Brown. Who's heard of her?
Was she the Cosmo editor?
Mm-hmm. Never mind. Steve's heard of her.
Oh, I've just read the book.
He's got her cell phone. Okay. Of course, you don't have to read that. Hand of God: 3 Approaches to Abortion by our friend Peter Kreeft. The Giver. The Giver is so uplifting, and the movie is great. Jeff Bridges, Meryl Streep's in the movie. The movie's, I know we did a controversial movie podcast. It wasn't controversial. It was controversial because you, the listeners, disagreed, which was good with some of the movies. But I will stand
with some of the movies.
You disagree with some of the movies, and it was shameful. But I stand by Terminator 2 being a pro-life movie because we have all the technology to create this stuff. It's just like Jurassic Park, and none of the ethics, none of the morals. And that's how we ended up with Skynet, Steve. You don't even know what that is because you refused to watch T2. That's how we ended up with Skynet, and that's how we ended up with the computers trying to take over the world. And Arnold had to come back and save us. So Terminator 2, obviously. But The Giver is really one of the best pro-life movies if you're just not going to read the book. The book's fantastic. But it's a great movie and fairly recent. So, okay, read a pro-life book, find a pro-life march. I know I'll be speaking at the West Coast Walk for Life. Honored to do that. It's going to be a lot of fun. That's in a couple of weeks. So if you're not going out to San Francisco, there'll be 65,000 pro-lifers. Go out there, meet us. Otherwise, Steve, I think this year there'll be more local marches than ever before.
Without a doubt. And so that would be a good resolution is whether you're going to Washington, San Francisco, I'll be going to Los Angeles. These big national and regional marches, great. Don't stop doing that by any means. But just as the Supreme Court has replaced the focus in this fight at the local level, I think we're going to see, as you said, Sean, a lot more of the local marches and walks and rallies for life. So this is a great time. Find one you've never been to before. Maybe it's something in your state capital and they're going to have 1,000 or 5,000 people there and you've just never gone before. Maybe it's something in your little town that's got 20 people there. It doesn't matter. Those things can still generate headlines. They still keep abortion controversial. I think it's a great year to find a new event that you've never been to before and tack that on top of whatever else you have traditionally done at the anniversary of Roe v. Wade.
Yeah, and the March for Life is awesome, but I think a lot of people won't go this year because of what you just cited. There'll be more local marches. I think that's a great thing.
Even the March for Life itself is doing more state-level marches, so they're on board with this too.
They've done a great job at getting more statewide marches, and we need those, especially post-Roe. And I know people are just sick of D.C., and it's hard. I mean, I know the theme will change and will adapt as time goes on for D.C., but, it ends at the Supreme Court, and maybe they'll change the route or something, but Supreme Court did their job. I mean, I don't want to march to the Supreme Court with a pro-life sign. I want to go up and buy them lunch and thank them. I think that would be illegal. But no, they have done their job. They created the mess with Roe, but then the current Supreme Court fixed it, and it's awesome, and it feels weird to kind of be marching, demanding something that's already been done. But we'll see what happens. Hopefully they move it to like the Dobbs anniversary. That'd be really cool in June. But for most people, I think starting this year, certainly next year, a lot of people will go to their local marches, and they should. I tell you who doesn't want you to go to your local march is Planned Parenthood. Because remember, all abortion's local. It's not in D.C. It's local, and your local Planned Parenthood director notices and takes note of how many people go to your state march or your city march. That is where this has shifted, thank God, with the overturning of Roe. So definitely find a local march. Particularly in January, and you can go through our training. You can read one of these pro-life books. You can do a lot. I mean, the 40 Days campaign starts on February the 22nd. But doing some kind of pro-life activism early in the year doesn't have to mean flying to D.C., but just going to your local Planned Parenthood and praying for an hour. Just do it. Get in the habit. It's like all the other resolutions.
Set the tone.
Set the tone. Everybody's going to, I got to lose 20 pounds by spring break or whatever. And that usually people with a New Year's resolution regarding weight, which is probably the most common or popular, it's like January 2nd or 3rd. They're like, I'm going to run 25 miles, and they don't delay. They may phase out in a few weeks or a month, but at the start of it, it's very important. So I think at the start of our year in January, our pro-life resolutions are very important to kind of attack. Okay, this next one, this won't be hard at all. Even if you don't make this a resolution, it's going to happen to you. And Steve, that is have an uncomfortable conversation about abortion.
I think this one is so critical, Sean, because we have seen, particularly in the election and particularly in some of these state-level referenda, where Planned Parenthood is running around and they're getting Montana to vote in favor of infanticide. And they're getting Michigan, which has been a little bit more of a purple state than a blue state the last few years. And they're getting Michigan to overwhelmingly approve abortion. I mean, you can even go internationally with some of the votes that we saw in, say, Ireland a few years back. This is a case where sometimes you see the results of these referenda and it would be tempting to think we've lost the debate over abortion. I think it's really more so we've never had a meaningful opportunity to have the discussion about abortion. And sometimes that's on us. We flee from it. We don't want to talk about it. We agree to disagree. And I think that's got to stop right now. We've seen some of these losses, and it's tempting to kind of throw up our arms and say, oh, I guess maybe we were caught unprepared. And I don't know that that's the case. I think we just have to get out there and have that conversation. And that means being equipped. It means being informed. It means being, are we prepared to explain why opposing abortion, even in the case of rape, even in the case of incest, why that's actually the compassionate position? I think most people are kind of ashamed of it. I think there's this great fear of like, oh, well, we're pro-life, but I don't know. Rape is only 1% of the cases where abortion takes place. That is the way to lose the argument. Instead, we need to bring up folks like Rowan, who we had on the podcast in late 2022, who was a victim of a violent sexual assault, conceived and chose life and found it empowering. Or Christy, who we featured in Day 41 magazine, who her father is her grandfather. You can figure out the math on that, but it's a tragic, twisted situation, and that man was able to continue for years to abuse his daughter because abortion allowed him to cover up the evidence of his crime. We need to be telling these stories if we hope to start winning some elections and winning some referenda, and we've got to be willing to talk about, treatment for ectopic pregnancy or uterine cancer or ovarian cancer. None of those things is actually abortion. And we need to be willing to ask, where are the bodies of the women who have died due to a lack of safe legal abortion? And we need to be able to talk about, where are the women supposedly being investigated for having miscarriages? All of these things are fake, and we need to, I don't want to say let's not be like the other side and we're out there constantly bringing it up and somebody pours their bowl of Cheerios in the morning and you're like, well, those Cheerios are, that's kind of what the other side does. They find every excuse to make it about their pet issue. We don't need to do that. We don't need to be obnoxious, but what we do need to do is be willing to take a principled stand with our loved ones, with our coworkers if it's appropriate to do so, and we've got the opportunity, with family members. You might not just change a mind, which can change a vote, which can change the world. You might find out that the person who's bringing up abortion around the dinner table, maybe your niece is bringing it up and she's sort of adversarial with you about it, not because she's looking to have a fight, but maybe she's looking for you to talk her out of having an abortion. You don't know, but we never find out the fruits unless we're willing to go out and have what can be a conversation we don't want to have, but one that we need to have.
Yeah, 82% of women said they never would have had an abortion if it were illegal. 70% said they never would have had one if somebody would have said something.
Just one person.
You bring up the niece. No, we need to run into these topics, the incest, the rape. We need to go on offense. They help our beautiful point, which is we side on the side of life. We also don't believe the myth that the violent and bloody procedure that is abortion is somehow designed to heal you from a rape, a violent rape, a tragedy. Surgery doesn't heal you from a tragedy. It's one of the biggest scams, and we hear it from the rape victims themselves, who say, I was 15 and my grandma or my mom or whatever drugged me into an abortion facility, or my boyfriend. I think one of the most beautiful lines that people just don't think about, but Matt had shared it with one of his rape cases when he was a prosecutor, and of course people said the rape victim had shared, you're going to have to carry around your rapist baby. And she said, this is not my rapist baby. It's my baby. He forfeited his rights over this child when he did what he did. He's a rapist. He's a criminal. But that I'm not going to punish my child for his sins. And I mean, maturity doesn't even give that the credit that it's due. But that's what people don't think about. And that's why in these conversations, we do need to talk about it. And that's what is upsetting, that the abortion industry has been so ill-equipped to discuss abortion. So ill-equipped. They spent years successfully relying on Roe, saying it's the law of the land. I wouldn't have an abortion, but I support a woman's right to choose. That's between a woman and her doctor. Slick Willie even said, I want it safe, legal, and rare. We had all the nice things that were like invitations for it to be like okay to support abortion because we had Roe v. Wade. Now Roe is gone. Okay, there's no more slavery, and a lot of people still want slaves. So they better be able to defend slavery and not just say it's the law of the land. And that's what's happening with abortion. It's no longer Roe. You have to defend it. Is this a good surgery? And people like Steve and I and this stupid podcast and all this stuff just needs to go away. We're restricting access to a basic surgery. And 40 Days for Life is an organization, dedicated to ending abortion. It would be the most absurd thing in the world if abortion was actually healthcare. It would be offensive.
This gets back to our second resolution, or rather our first resolution, where we said step outside your comfort zone because you're going to make an impact on the workers. Why is morale down? In what other industry do you even talk about morale being down?
Is morale down in dentist offices, Steve? Are you aware?
Yeah,
what about,
as far as I know, no.
Orthopedics?
I don't think so.
Kidney dialysis?
No.
Morale?
Taco Bell? Are the people is there like a nationwide crisis of people leaving their jobs at Taco Bell?
No, they come up with new and weird products every week. I think it's high tide for Taco Bell.
Yeah, now there's tacos made of Cheetos and Doritos and other chips that end with Ito. It's God bless Taco Bell.
Yeah, that's
I'm
another. There's a lot of gluten at Taco Bell.
There's a lot of gluten at Taco Bell. But this is why, similarly, nobody shows up outside the dentist or the orthopedist or the Taco Bell on their knees in the rain praying. And I think that's what a lot of this comes back to is they're unprepared because what talking point can they come up with that prepares them for the guy that's out in the rain on his knees praying for those workers? There's no way that they can equip themselves with that to respond.
And the problem is we know abortion kills a baby. That's the problem. So let's say there was an organization, Steve, and they were dedicated to ending, let's see. They were dedicated to ending having your wisdom teeth pulled. One of the most common surgeries in America, like abortion. And they systematically went around and they stood outside of dental offices and they said, no, justice for the wisdom teeth. And they didn't want the wisdom teeth pulled. And there would be a lack of, I guess maybe it'd be frustrating for, why do they oppose that? I don't understand. There'd be a lot of confusion. Pro-life movement doesn't have that. You stand outside in front of a Planned Parenthood, they know why you're there. You stand out and protest Chick-fil-A and what they do to chickens, people know at least why you're there. They don't agree with it, but they know why you're there. If you're standing opposing having wisdom teeth removed, they literally are going to need a lot of explaining. No, I don't get it. I understand why people do the animal rights. I understand the environmentalists. I understand anti-tobacco. I understand pro-abortion. I understand anti-abortion. I understand all that, but wisdom teeth? So it's so odd it would have no credibility and it would get laughed at, Steve. But I tell you what would never happen. Ever. They wouldn't have some federal law where you couldn't stand near the dentist. The DOJ wouldn't go after the pro-wisdom tooth guy. Abortion is different.
If I'm at Chick-fil-A and I'm having my spicy chicken sandwich with buffalo sauce, great combination. You got to try it.
God bless you.
Yeah, it's excellent. And there's somebody out there protesting, or maybe they're handing me literature on the way in. Yeah, I'm not traumatized by that. I don't see that as sort of this passive violence or whatever they're calling it, the suggestion that it's violent. I don't feel unsafe. I think it speaks to the nature of conscience, the discomfort that people feel when they go into work at an abortion facility or when they go in to have an abortion isn't because of anything that we're doing. It's because of what the Lord is doing in their own souls. And maybe we're bringing that to the top of their mind at the moment, but it's a good reflection in this year of free speech.
The year of free speech, and it just shows why this is worth it. Why this is worth it. why in the world did the Supreme Court, they didn't overturn Roe. They beat it up with a baseball bat. And everybody just wants to ignore that. I mean, as we said at the beginning, we didn't overturn Roe, but why did they do that? I mean, did anybody actually read, besides us, Alito's opinion? I mean, that America was in the shameful category with North Korea and China with late-term abortion on the day of birth? I mean, is there no hesitation? And that's fine. It's obvious and apparent that the DOJ is targeting us in a post-Roe world. But isn't there concern that they're on the wrong side of history? I mean, there just seems to be no hesitation on, did we get this wrong? Because science says we got it right with overturning Roe. Science says you people are nuts. We do surgeries on unborn children. We put Scott Peterson on death row for second-degree murder of his unborn son Connor. All the stuff we've said. We don't let pregnant women on a roller coaster. We won't serve a pregnant lady 10 whiskeys at a bar. We protect unborn children by law a lot. And then if we don't think that they should be born, we can kill them. And for whatever reason. And so this whole, it's such a large cliff with abortion that it's worthy of our time. It's worthy of our sacrifice. It's worthy of our prayers. It's worthy of us standing up for freedom of speech. And it's worthy, certainly, of a resolution, which is why we're doing this. You have to do something, I think, with the overturning of Roe. You could have been a halfway pro-life person. Like, can't believe we have abortion. It's crazy. And then you just move on with your life. But the overturning of Roe has united many in our country, mainly on the pro-life side. 40 Days for Life has grown. But it's ticked off a lot of people, including many in our government, who think it's their right to sort of restrict our pro-life opinions for some reason. So even though it just, when we have public discourse, it's doing exactly what the Supreme Court wants, which is sending it back to the people and back to the states, which apparently the DOJ doesn't want. So,
well, here's another resolution, Sean. We were going to cover this a little bit later, but I think you've provided a good segue. I think a great resolution for pro-lifers for this year is to read the Dobbs decision. It's long. You read the whole thing with dissents and everything. It tops 200 pages. Maybe you can at least read the syllabus. It's the first handful of pages that sort of sums it all up. But this is something that we as pro-lifers really need to know, because we saw the immediate backlash to the Dobbs decision and the overturning of Roe. And there were the pregnancy centers that were torched, and there were the churches that were desecrated. We saw all of that, and there's a lot of noise in the streets. And if any of those protesters and vandals would have bothered to have read the decision, they would have had some of their objections answered, because Alito picks them all off. He goes through the history of the legal status of abortion in America and, in fact, throughout the Western tradition. And just one by one, he takes out all of the arguments of Roe, all of the arguments of Casey, almost 20 years later, and all of the arguments being made now. I think this is good reading. If you don't read a book, read this decision, or better yet, read a book and read the decision, because you're going to come away with a better understanding of what Roe is, what Roe isn't, what Dobbs is, what Dobbs isn't, and where we've been and where we go from here.
And the summary at the beginning is awesome. So that's enough. And I know if you bring up Alito to some of if you say, yeah, but how did they overturn Roe versus Wade? What did the Supreme Court say? They're all a bunch of fascists. All right. So it's hard to get past that. Kavanaugh's a rapist. Alito's something. I don't know. Fascist.
Here's the benefit of being able to have read it is when it comes up, you can say, have you even read the opinion? No. Have you? Yes.
That is what Steve walks around Kroger asking people all day. Have you read Alito's opinion? Please get away from me, sir. Sorry, it's just pro-life apologetics. But when they say no,
you the year of free speech.
The year of free speech. You haven't read Alito's opinion. Be quiet. I like it. All right. The next thing, and we covered this a bit last week on the podcast. Make a resolution. Obviously, there's a lot of dark forces out there against not us, but life and the unborn. I mean, we've dehumanized an entire segment of our population. We're trying to do basic things. This isn't very sophisticated to help them. We go out there, we offer alternatives. That's it. And they want to get rid of us. They want to silence so many people. And that's why prayer is required. Taking care of our own souls is required. Loving our spouses, loving our children, taking care of our homes, living life, enjoying life. We're the ones who love life. The pro-abortion people are walking around miserable, yelling at everybody all day. We just keep getting persecuted, and we expect it, but we're not like dying in the streets. Nor are women who aren't having abortions, despite Hillary Clinton's tweet, women will die. No one's died. But we're not dying either. But the unborn are. The unborn are. And we're going to cover it on the podcast. You're going to see a lot of good on the webcast tonight. You're going to see a lot of good news in 2023. You're going to see abortions drop. You're going to see the birth rate go up. You're going to see that the sky doesn't fall in the first full year of Post-Roe. And you're going to see that women aren't robots. They're not stupid. They're not these like programmed people that like hook themselves up to a cord that's hooked up to Whoopi Goldberg that like makes them just realize I'm only a woman if I have an abortion. Abortion is my sacrament. We hear that crap in the media, but it's not the heart of a woman. And we see it on the sidewalks. They will choose life. They will choose adoption. They don't grow up wanting an abortion. They are not monsters. No one has abortion because of freedom of choice. They feel trapped. They feel they have no choice. There's a local abortion clinic, and distance is a deterrent. We will see that in 2023, and we talk about it a lot tonight on the webcast. And if you missed it, watch the Roe is Dead webcast. Okay, the next resolution, Steve, contact your local and federal and state elected officials.
Yeah, we can't just sort of give up on them. I know that's tempting, particularly in some states. Oh, I live in...
Are you speaking personally, Steve?
Yes and no. Can I give that kind of cop-out answer? Yes and no. Yeah,
we can't give up on them and curse them and throw things at them on the TV.
Even if they failed to defund Planned Parenthood back when they had Congress in 2017.
2017.
No, we need to reach out to them because I think, it's important. Do it at the federal level for sure, but at the state and local level, it's all the more important because everybody is always talking about, write your congressman, write your senator, write the president. And the folks at the state level where abortion is now being played out, they're not hearing from their constituents as much. And so you kind of think, well, what difference can one voter make? A big difference, because those elected officials, they know that everybody who calls them represents X number of constituents, and everybody who sends them a letter represents Y number of constituents, and everybody who goes and visits their office represents a certain number of constituents. And so you're speaking for more than yourself. And I've heard from legislators firsthand, if they get 3-4 letters on a particular topic, they stand up and they take notice, because that means there's some greater number of people at the grassroots who stand for this issue. So when we take these steps, when we reach out to our elected officials, we can really do a handful of things. We can advance good pro-life legislation. We can make sure that good pro-life legislation doesn't start carving out exceptions for the people that we want to throw overboard because they're politically inconvenient. Maybe if we're in a state that has a largely pro-abortion legislature, we can prevent bad legislation from taking effect, or we can at least delay it. We'd rather stop it, but if you can delay it by a month or 6 months or a term, that can save a lot of lives in the meantime. And the other thing that we can do, Sean, is we reach out to our elected officials. We can hold the pro-life legislators accountable. What do I mean by that? I mean, everybody loves to campaign on being pro-life when it's primary season and they're among their pro-life constituents. And then the job comes of actually governing. And it's, we've got to look at the political realities on the ground. No, we need to hold those folks accountable, take a principled stand. Folks like Governor Kemp and Governor Abbott and Governor DeWine and Governor DeSantis have shown that you can take a principled pro-life stand and boldly do so and not pay this political price that we've seen some of the wimps pay.
In fact, the opposite. Increase your margin of victory by owning pro-life. And the wimps lost. Maybe it'll be a lesson learned. I don't know if it will be. Some of the candidates were goofy. It was just bad. It was so mishandled on so many fronts. The Herschel Walker thing was totally mishandled. I mean, let's say he paid for the abortion of that girl, which it looks like he did. I know people get mad if you say that, but like, she had a receipt. I don't know. There was a lot there. And it just blew it. Totally blew it. I mean, he could have come out and said, yeah, I won the Heisman. I'm an NFL player. I got this girl pregnant. I paid for abortion. And there isn't a day that goes by that I don't think about my daughter or son who is not here because of my irresponsibility. And I don't want my biggest regret in life to be the standard for women in Georgia. And I stand behind the Supreme Court overturning Roe v. Wade. I wish they would have done it before I would have ever had that horrible event in my own personal life. Boom. It's done. Like, you just own it. And, and if he didn't pay for it or whatever, but the whole, like, we have to absolutely run from abortion, particularly when it's in your past, which the pro-life movement, I think, has done a great job. I mean, our most powerful advocates are the women who have laid on the table and had an abortion. Our biggest advocates are many of the men who say they did pay for the abortion and they regret it. The workers. The Workers is a movie made about Abby Johnson, that did well in secular culture, So it's just one of these, if they own abortion and they did them, then if you're a halfway pro-life politician, shouldn't you own abortion? I mean, you only have to gain. You only have a bigger voice to have. So they lost. They should have lost. I'm glad they lost. And I'm not glad they lost in the sense that, a pro-abortion candidate won, but we need better candidates. And I don't know. I mean, maybe in a post-Roe America, there will be some moderate Democrats, the ones that are left, that are like, I just don't have to support abortion at 40 freaking weeks in order to be a Democrat. I mean, maybe internally the Democrats will just start to be like, is this helpful? I mean, and the far left is totally, I think they have to do it because they'll be crucified. But I don't know. Post-Roe, you're some Democrat from South Carolina or Texas or parts of California that are conservative, and you're like, I'm pro-life. I don't know if the world will end as time passes. I don't think it will. I think it'll get better with time. But we'll see. We'll see. Right now, all reaction since Dobbs overturned Roe. DOJ, the abortion industry, the media, it's all just awful. It's all just the extreme. Newsom's running around. We'll have abortion through to fourth graders. Like he's just like, they're just pushing it to the extreme in California. They can do that all day long, but we can go and we can pray outside and we can speak to the heart of a mom. And that's exactly what we've done peacefully with a proven track record for 15, 16 years now. And we'll continue to do it. And the last pro-life resolution is support your local pregnancy center. They are more important than ever. We have worked alongside them since the beginning of 40 Days for Life because we're local, they're local, and that's who's changing hearts and minds in the grassroots. And it's more important now than ever in a post-Roe America.
Yeah, and we've got to know about them because what did we hear as soon as Roe was overturned? I
We
hope
don't
these
care.
pro-lifers are willing to start helping out these women that they won't allow to get abortions anymore. And
We're not. We don't want to help them. We don't want to
No.
care about them. Never have, never
We
will.
just shut down all the pro-life pregnancy centers now. They were just a talking point along the way. Roe overturned. Adios. Now, and this is something where I've complained about it before. I think we've seen this at times, even from well-intentioned pro-lifers. Okay, Roe's overturned. Now we have to start walking with women. We don't need to start really doing anything. What we need to do is continue and to expand the work that has been done, making sure women know that there's a place for them to go, that every abortion vulnerable woman has a real choice, has a pregnancy center in her community, probably more than one, maybe several, that is willing to help her with medical care, with ultrasound, with parenting classes, with material support, with housing. All of these resources are already in place. We need to be able to know about them. Really, I think two things. One, so that when someone says, well, what are you guys going to do now that Roe's overturned? We can say, well, these are the resources that are available to empower an abortion vulnerable woman to choose life in our community. And second, most importantly, to actually help those women. If we meet a woman who's abortion-minded and we give her all of the talking points that we share in What to Say When, or in some of those other books that we mentioned earlier, and we can give her all of the theological reasons, all the reasons not to have an abortion, we still need to provide her with the practical support, the hands and feet of Christ on the ground to help her choose life, to help her thrive, to help her baby thrive, to help her family thrive, to help her relationship with her boyfriend or her husband thrive. All of those things are absolutely essential. And if we don't know where is our pregnancy help center, when is it open, and what resources does it provide, those are easy things to figure out. You can have it on a card in your wallet or on a document on your phone. If we don't know those, we're going to be very under-equipped to support that woman in need.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, you know, when you go through these resolutions here, I'll just do a quick recap. And then there's a theme here that is very important in Post-Roe. Okay, number one, take a step outside of your comfort zone. Go to the sidewalk. Number two, read a pro-life book. Doesn't have to be one of our books, but a pro-life book. Number three, find a march and go to it. Number four, have an uncomfortable conversation about abortion. Number five, step up your personal prayer life. Number six, contact your elected officials. And number seven, read The Opinion. Read Alito. Awesome. Awesome. And as Steve said, you can tell others you read it and just be, I guess, self-righteous is the motivation there.
The year of free speech and the year of being self-righteous. We'll put them together.
The year of self-righteousness. Oh, my goodness. Okay. And also the last one, number 8, get to know your local pregnancy center. All of these tie in to the year of free speech in that this is not the year to walk on eggshells. There's like a virus going around, and I know it's freaky. Poor Mark Houck in Philadelphia. And I mentioned earlier, I think I've been talking to DOJ. I think we're going to win, and we're going to win big up there. I think it's going to be awesome. But anyways, that's alarming. What happened to Mark? I don't think it's going to be happening everywhere. There's also this thing like, well, maybe the overturning of Roe wasn't good because now Illinois or California or New York want to abort babies and leave them on the table to die if they survive. And all of those are reactionary. Those are in the context of us winning. They're in the context of Roe getting overturned. And I'll take Roe getting overturned because now we go and we see these horrible, barbaric laws that are showing the true colors of those who support abortion. It's insane. I mean, how does Governor Newsom brush his teeth and look at himself in the mirror and be like, I'm going to leave the kid on the table to die? You know, I mean, all of that is very revealing. And that's why, but in the context, it's because we're winning. They wouldn't have done this 10 years ago. They were winning. They were completely winning 10 years ago. They had Obama. I mean, it was awesome for them. And yet right now, they've never had to talk about abortion. They've never had to defend their point. And now that's why we get all these extreme, insane responses. We get NPR airing the abortion of twins, thinking it's like this beautiful healthcare moment. We get poor Anne Hathaway from Les Mis, fantastic musical, decent movie, saying that abortion is merciful. They don't know what to say. Hillary called us the Taliban. She said that pro-life families are terrorists. That's just dumb.
You don't make those arguments if you're winning.
You don't make those arguments if you're winning. I would argue you don't make those arguments ever. But anyways, it's like the playground. You're a terrorist. Well, you're ugly. I don't know what to say. So it's just like, okay, we're terrorists. We didn't know that. I thought I was a member of the Knights of Columbus. Nope, you're a member of the Taliban. So, it's one of those where it's good. It's all good. It's one of the greatest days in the history of our country and the history of freedom. America, who helped spread abortion around the world, overturned Roe on June the 24th. So don't fall for the virus. Don't walk on eggshells. Don't stomp around and be a know-it-all on abortion. But do give a faithful and loving witness. Why? Because people convert. People change their minds. We're not monsters. We don't want to run around and kill babies. Some people do. But the majority of abortion supporters don't get it. Even when they dig their heels in, you can talk them off the ledge through reason, through science, and through, most importantly, the love in which you convey the reason and the science. So be sure, as we wrap up, to share the YouTube page, get people to subscribe. Be sure to comment at the bottom. And we appreciate all the comments, the good, the bad, and the ugly. We're looking forward to this new format. You can, of course, still listen to the podcast audio only. If you are one of the wise people that does not want to stare at us, you can definitely do that on the audio podcast where podcasts are available. But be sure you subscribe to the podcast and subscribe to YouTube. And we appreciate all the support. We have a lot coming out. We have a lot coming out on free speech. It's going to be a busy year. We are defending our rights this year. That is for sure. And so we'll have a lot more on all this insanity with the DOJ and the FBI, with us having to sue New York, with the Lent 40 Days for Life campaign kicking off on February the 22nd. We have a lot going on. It's all positive. The impact of 40 Days for Life right now is at an all-time high. It is just phenomenal to get the reactions that we're getting from the abortion industry themselves, but also some other feedback that we've been given that just the impact that you're having where you live is awesome. It's awesome, and it's peaceful, and it's law-abiding, and it's what makes America awesome. So thank you, Steve. Be sure to rate, review, share this podcast, leave your comment, and we will see you next time. God bless you.